Hi, this is Pete, and today I want to talk to you about slide guitar basics. I want to talk about the different materials you can use for your slide, a little bit about technique, and just in general how to get a good sound with your slide. In the beginning, if you're just started trying to play some slide, you might have noticed it's hard to get a good sound. So just some pointers, some tips to getting a good sound with your slide, and try to choose the right slide for the job. You'll notice here I'm holding a Resonator guitar. This is a National Resonator guitar. These came out in the late 1920s and became popular with blues slide guitar players as well as Hawaiian slide guitar playing. And both kind of influenced each other. I'm talking today mainly about blues slide. And a lot of what I do when I play slide is I play in an open tuning. This guitar here is in open G tuning. Open G and open D are very popular tunings for blues, especially for acoustic guitar. You can also play higher voiced versions of those tunings. Open G, sometimes called Spanish tuning, can also be tuned up pitched higher and played as open A tuning. That probably works better for electric guitar than acoustic guitars because you have to increase the tension on the strings to get to open A. In open G, we loosen the tension on the strings, so you want to avoid the possibility of doing some damage to your guitar by pitching up. Pitching lower is easier to do. That said, you can go to open A tuning or open D tuning or open E tuning, which is related to open D in a sense. Those are called vestibule tunings. Open E is pitched higher, open D is pitched lower. In Spanish tuning, open A is pitched higher and open G is pitched lower. So I'm in open G here, and the strings for open G tuning are D, G, D, G, B, D. So let's talk a little bit about the different materials you can use for slide. I actually think that using a different slide for acoustic guitar and electric guitar they're not always the same. For an electric guitar, you have your amp and distortion or gain that allows you to get more sound out of your guitar, and therefore the materials you use might be different. You'll notice here I'm using a ceramic slide which has a fair amount of mass. It's fairly heavy. And the heaviness of the slide, the mass, helps produce some of the sound. If I were to use a sort of lighter glass slide, and this isn't super thin, but it's pretty thin, I feel like I don't get as much sound and not as much sustained. So for acoustic guitar, that's going to be a more important factor than electric guitar, where you got the amplifier doing the work for you. So there's glass slides. There's this is a glass slide. There's the steel slide here. These are kind of nice, I think, in the beginning when you're playing slide because they're nice and thin and easier to direct. A major part of slide guitar playing is intonation. As you might have already discovered, if I was to fret a note on the guitar, let's say the 5th fret, this is a G note, I could put my finger anywhere within that fret and I get that same exact pitch. But with a slide, I get about 4 or 5 different microtones. So if I really want to be accurate with the pitch of, say, the G note, I have to be right on top of the fret wire. Okay? Now that gives us a lot of room for musical interpretation. I think is why a lot of people like slide. It has more of a vocal quality where you can slide in between different microtones. Get the nice vibrato, nice wavering quality. So that's very important, intonation. At first you want to make sure you're really directing the slide right to the fret wire. You notice that I am holding my slide very low, and I have it slightly tilted away. It's a little hard to see, but slightly tilted away from the guitar. And I'm playing on that first string. A lot of slide playing happens on the first string. Then as you work into the interior of the guitar, those other strings, you tilt the slide in. So for instance, I'd be going, simply going from the first string to the second string. Okay, so I was talking about different materials. Let's pick a different slide. This is a brass slide, and this has a fair amount of weight to it as well. You notice all the slides I have here, I'm putting them on my pinky, and they're fairly long so that I can cover all the strings. When I'm in an open tuning, in order to play full chords with the slide, I need a slide that's long enough to cover all the strings. I don't have any shorter slides here today, but you could pick a slide that's just, a shorter slide if you're only going to be playing single strings. And I think of that as more the slide playing that does accompanied, where you're playing with other people and you don't really need to play full chords. But since I'm playing a lot of finger picking style music, that's solo music, I want to have a slide that I can play full chords with. Now, technique-wise, there are 3 points of contact that I have. I have my slide, and then I have my damping finger, which in this case, I use my first finger to dampen the strings. See if you can see that. I'm holding the slide, just resting on the string, and my damping finger, my first finger, is kind of cupped together with my other 2 fingers to glide along the strings. And that dampens the sounds on the other side of the string. You can kind of hear there's an echoing quality or resonating quality of the strings. So to get rid of that noise, I lay the finger on the string behind the slide, and that helps isolate that tone. That really gives it that clear, crisp sound of that note that I want to play in effect. I was talking about playing on the first string. I have my slide slightly tilted out, and then working on the inner strings, I tilt my slide in. And then I gradually will bring my slide up and play as I play like 4th, 5th, 6th string. So what you want to avoid is, if you're playing the first string, for instance, try to keep your slide low. I think a lot of people do this. They do. And I think it makes it harder to direct your slide and see what you're actually doing. And then when you need to, bring the slide in to play the other strings, the inner strings. See what else do we want to talk about here? Oh, you notice I use my slide on my pinky. Some people would prefer to have it on their middle finger, and I understand the desire to put it on your middle finger. I think it gives you a little more control, and that's good. The control is good. You want to avoid making bad sounds, and if having the slide on that ring finger gives you a little more control, then great, do that. For me, since I'm a fingerstyle player, I like to use my other fingers to fret chords. So having those three fingers together to work together is part of my style of playing. So there's some slide basics that we covered. We talked a little bit about materials: brass, steel, glass. I should mention that when I play electric guitar, I actually prefer something that doesn't have too much weight. The thin-walled steel or thin-walled glass actually works really well. That keeps them from banging around on the frets. You know, you can get that kind of banging around on the frets thing. One thing I didn't talk about also was setting up a guitar for slide. In general, a guitar with low action, that is strings that are very low on the fretboard, and with light gauge strings, doesn't work very well for slide guitar. Remember, your slide is gliding along the strings. You don't want to press down on the strings. Kind of defeats the purpose of the slide. You end up kind of getting the same sound that you would get with a finger sliding along the strings. So you're using very, just a light touch on the strings. The slide is essentially just resting on the strings. Same with the dampening finger. If you press too hard, you get that. If you don't press hard enough, you get that scratchy sound. So you got to work on that a little bit. Best thing to do is take an exercise like playing a minor pentatonic scale, and just directing the notes at the slide, directing the slide at the notes that you want to play. So you have an actual target in mind. I go 3rd to 5th fret, 5th to 7th fret, 7th fret to 10th fret, and 10th fret to 12th fret, and backwards. Actually, that should have been the 8th fret. I should have done that like. I should have gone. If I'm playing a G minor pentatonic scale, I was thinking of D tuning. So, what else do I want to talk about here? I think that's it for now. I'll come back and we'll talk about the different ideas about creating phrases, using scale tones, and then I'll talk about finger picking later on and how to work your slide with your finger picking. All right, that's it for now.